Welcome friends, subscribers, non-subscribers, how y'all doing? Today's video is a debunk video. It's probably be, I think this is the third one on the channel so far. This one is for Bleach Hub's Fullbring Bankai Ichigo is stronger than Dangai Ichigo video, so please go check out the original. To avoid copyright issues and not stealing another person's content, I'm doing this in little snippets, so you'll hear snippets about anywhere from 10-15 seconds of Hub, so I'm not taking them out of context, and then I will respond with what I think is a proper response. So here we go.
But for one, there's just like standard shonen power progression. I don't know why it surprises anybody that Fullbring Bankai Ichigo, like the next form in the next arc when Ichigo regains his powers, is going to be surpassing this new form.
Shonen power progression or shonen power cliffing isn't a real thing. It's simply bad writing. Power cliffing is just one way for a writer to catch other characters up to another without having to put in the legwork of character development. An example of where power cliffing doesn't exist but should, based on shonen standards, is Naruto. I don't mean that in a derogatory sense. The Sasuke retrieval arc follows after the Konoha Crush. Naruto has learned a ton of moves since then, from the summoning jutsu to Rasengan, and to a degree controlling the No-Tail's chakra boost. But he hasn't cliffed any of the Jonin or Hokage level characters, despite all the cool things he does at the Valley of the End. This also applies to Hebi Sasuke when we jump to Shippuden. Hebi Sasuke still hasn't surpassed Orochimaru, and based on cliffing, he absolutely should have. And what makes it worse is someone like Itachi, who was shown to be a badass at the end of Naruto Part 1, still hasn't been surpassed by characters who've been training for years. So power cliffing is bad. Where power cliffing also goes out the window for Hub's argument is Yamamoto in the Thousand Year Blood War. I think it was even third or fourth form, Aizen was far stronger and far superior to even Yamamoto at that point. Yet a weakened version of Yamamoto, and this is commented on by Yuha himself because he lost his arm, Ichigo should be scaling far higher than him, but he doesn't. Ichigo doesn't perform well against base Yuha at all. We know this based simply on Reiatsu. They couldn't steal Yamamoto's Bankai without actual Yuha because they didn't have the spirit energy to do so. This, however, was different for Ichigo because of his actual innate hollow powers. This was surmised and proven by Kisuke with the temporary hollification pills that he created for the war. Yamamoto is also really bad for the power cliffing argument because Soul Society and Arrancar arc Yamamoto is the strongest Yamamoto in the series. This is because he still has his arm, he's a bit more ruthless, and we know he has the matured Bankai that he uses in Thousand Year Blood War.
Also the idea that just Dangai Ichigo isn't really anything special. Yes, it's a strong form, don't get me wrong, but the form itself is essentially just Ichigo with 3 months of training. Mugetsu is the special part.
I'm not going to lie, I really didn't understand this part because he kind of does acknowledge later that Dangai Ichigo is a fusion of Ichigo and Zanpakuto, which clearly gives a boost because it does later in the series. And I don't know, I'm really confused how he thinks that 3 months of training is going to make Ichigo transcendent. I think he's trying to take the stance that Ichigo was already transcendent because Ichigo with his mask could feel Chrysalis Aizen's Reiatsu, but it kind of doesn't make sense because if Ichigo's only training for 3 months, that's not going to make up for the fact that Aizen was already far more superior than him just in the Chrysalis, and he evolves again. What's worse is he says that Dangai isn't the special part, but Mugetsu is. That definitely doesn't make sense because the only way to get to Mugetsu is through Dangai's boost and fusion with the Zanpakuto. Again, you can't claim that Mugetsu is a special one when Dangai Ichigo was still fighting that final form of Aizen. I don't know if he remembers or anyone remembers, but Dangai Ichigo is the one that slapped away Ultra Fragor.
What makes this a bit more concrete is that Tsukushima and Ginjo both allegedly know about the entire battle between Dangai Ichigo and Aizen. How we know this is because Tsukushima planted the memories of him helping Ichigo fight Aizen into Chad and Orihime.
So I don't even completely blame Hub for this one. I actually think this one's on Kubo. Kubo sometimes makes this mistake of when characters are thinking about actions that have occurred in the past while talking, he doesn't exactly show us all the time who specifically is thinking what, and I think that's what's going on here. For proper context, Hub has been arguing, you couldn't see it because it got cut, that Ginjo and Tsukushima have a pretty good understanding of Ichigo's powers and have been claiming he's going to regain his Soul Reaper powers. But there's two big issues. The first one being that Ginjo and Tsukushima have only in general said Soul Reaper powers, Soul Reaper powers, Soul Reaper powers. They never specifically mentioned the powers that defeated Aizen or anything like that. He has a lot of scans of these, but they don't actually specify what specific powers. Problem 2 is he's using the inserted memory panel as an example of Ginjo actually witnessing it, while Orihime and Chad never actually saw it. But the problem is that when you look at the panel, the character of Tsukishima is shadowed. In Bleach chapter 462, Why Me Sad, it is shown that Tsukishima is very clear in their memories. The anime kind of ruins this because it shows them clear, but that wasn't on Kubo's part. He specifically drew him shaded in the manga. Shaded is important because it implies this is Ichigo thinking this because Tsukishima wasn't actually there, therefore he can't picture him there. And finally, we also know memory frames can be misleading or belong to no one. For example, we see in chapter 433, when Ginjo is talking about hollows from memory, it's an assortment of ones we've seen from different characters, including Bulbous Tree, Grand Fisher, etc.
For Ginjo, he says you're going to gain a power beyond a Soul Reaper, because essentially the Fullbring is melding with his Shinigami abilities, and it's also his Hollow abilities. And then in Can't Fear Your Own World, we learned that it's a part of the Soul Kings.
That last little bit that got cut off was him saying that Fullbring is this Soul King level transcendent power enhancement. But we know that it isn't, and he kind of implied this from Can't Fear Your Own World. I don't know if he didn't read it or what happened there, but it stated that it just activates the potential of a soul. It doesn't give them Soul King level powers. What's also weird about trying to use that as evidence is that Ichigo already had powers beyond a Soul Reaper, not even taking into account his Quincy abilities, but he had hollow powers. This was the same line that Visored Shinji used for Ichigo.
Power. He shows the picture of Ginjo specifically in the little panel where he's talking about, oh, you regain the power that you used against Aizen. You know, he shows the panel.
Full transparency, I actually think for his argument, this may be the best piece of evidence that he has. So this scan's about interpretation, and he interprets this scan as referring to Ichigo's Fullbring being the power regained, ignoring the fact that Yuha kind of specifies that he's talking about the power to actually kill the Reo, which we know Fullbring does not have. Now, I know this is about how the line was specifically interpreted from Japanese to English, but when Hub reads it, he reads it as regaining that power you lost. But it doesn't say that, it says the more generic version of that. I know that seems petty or splitting hairs, but this goes back to his earlier arguments about having a ton of scans, stating that Ichigo is going to regain his old powers. It just says Soul Reaper powers. We have several scans that show True Shikai Ichigo is more powerful than Fullbring, but True Shikai and Dangai are the same. Going to Shunsui when he was talking to Ichigo's friends in the world of the living, he was worried that True Shikai or the Bankai version would not be able to come back to the world of the living, but this was never considered an issue with the Fullbring powers. If Fullbring characters and their powers were shared like from Ichigo to the other Fullbringers, like Riruka for example, we would have several Soul King characters walking around the world of the living with no Gentei Kaijo. That makes no sense. Even captain level characters need Gentei Kaijo when they go down, even though they have extremely refined Ryatsu control. And if anyone says Fullbring characters like Riruka or Jackie scale to 4th form Aizen or any nonsense like that, they're being completely disingenuous. Sorry, I know this response is a little bit on the longer side, but furthermore evidence, we know Yuha isn't talking about Fullbring Bankai when he says you regained your true power in chapter 673 Father. He is referring to the true Shikai form because Ichigo never lost his Fullbring powers, his Bankai was just broken. Just because a Bankai is broken doesn't mean you can't use it or you've lost all your powers, it just means it's not the same. This is further evidence because in chapter 618, The Black Arm, Ichigo and Yuha had already fought in the true Shikai form.
It becomes one with the Getsuga itself, right? Like it literally just becomes a form for him. Although weird that that'd be a part of his Zanpakuto evolution because the Getsuga Tensho shouldn't necessarily be tied just to the Zanpakuto itself, but I see what Kubo is going for in this scene.
Hub, as a loyal subscriber, I don't actually think you know what Kubo was meaning here. A perfect example of the user and the attack becoming one is Shuke Haku Taken, so this makes complete sense.
It's like a very cool form, but you need to like demystify it and not be like, it's this thing that can never be surpassed.
So I actually agree with Hub here. I've seen a lot of people, especially on Reddit, run into where they just kind of mystify Dangai to this really weird level when Dangai is equal to True Shikai Ichigo and is completely surpassed by Horn of Salvation and Bankai.
Does it upset me that the Fullbring is stronger than Dangai? Yeah, it does a lot. Fullbring was kind of just haphazardly thrown in here as like this way stronger ability out of nowhere that we've never heard about.
I don't know how you can read Bleach and say that Fullbring came out of nowhere. Kubo was clearly hinting that Chad and Orihime were different. They actually goes out of their way to explain it, specifically in the Gansenbein Chad fight. He goes out of his way to say that my powers are different from Rukia and the others, and I've been feeling different as I come to Wakamundo. This is compounded by the fact that we note that their weapons, their affinity weapons, are things that they love and are noted to love from day one. And as we stated, Fullbring isn't some god power. It's really no different from any other power in Bleach. It has its strengths and weaknesses, and it has its core abilities. An example being that Orihime's powers are not unique. There is a character in Bleach that has the exact same abilities as her and actually uses it to a much better and more combative degree, and that's Hachigen's Kido. Look at it. It has the same abilities, and he's the one that heals Orihime's piece when it's broken by Yami.
Power scaling is what I do, and so I'm going to have to acknowledge that even though this form sucks and it completely unearths the entire narrative of Ultra Instinct,
I couldn't really cut this in any good way, but simply put, he's starting to talk about narrative implications and power and what Kubo is trying to imply with Fullbring Bankai Ichigo. I hate narrative power scaling because it never makes any sense. Narratively, you could say Ukiura is the strongest Espada simply because he plays such a pivotal role in FKT. That doesn't make him the strongest Espada when we have statements in the data book and from other characters that Yami is the strongest. He also states that Kubo was narratively implying that Fullbring was beyond these transcendent characters, but he never gets a transcendent character fight. This is the problem with narrative evidence, that it's circumstantial and it goes out of the window the moment something that doesn't follow the narrative happens. You can't just throw it out and say, oh, that doesn't count. The reason Fullbring Bankai Ichigo doesn't fight transcendent characters like Almighty Yuha or Soul King Almighty Yuha is because that's reserved for transcendent characters like true Shikai Ichigo, which is a combination of his powers. Narrative evidence would be Yami follows Ukiura because he thinks he's the strongest, even though it's noted several times that Yami's Pesquisa is trash.
went back to the same level of progression that he was at. You know, if he's going to train with his new Shinigami powers, shouldn't he end up being like Dangai again? But then Kubo is like, that was a one-time thing, let me...
What do you mean never again? True Shikai Ichigo is literally the combination of all of his powers. Dangai Ichigo was the combination of his Hollow, Quincy, and Shimigami powers into one. That's what that was. We see that when merged Tensei Zangetsu and White are fused. Fullbring Bankai Ichigo is just getting his Hollow and Shimigami powers perfectly fused back together and then him being bestowed that, while his Quincy still remain his core and suppressing his abilities. True Shikai is the perfect merger of all of his abilities. Fullbring, Quincy, Hollow, and Soul Reaper. It's why Yuha says you have regained the powers that you have always had.
You know how Mugetsu was like a one-time thing and Ichigo completely loses his powers? Well, he can use Mugetsu whenever he wants now because all of the Shinigami will just come together.
This is something I also didn't get. It's almost like he didn't pay attention. This isn't just something they can do over and over again. This was a debt repayment by the head captain from the Gotei. It is still 100% illegal to give a human or someone not of the Gotei Shimigami powers. Plus, even narratively, Ichigo couldn't just whip out Mugetsu whenever he wants, because if he uses Mugetsu again against someone like Yuha, it's not going to do anything. That's why Yuha was the next villain, and that's why the Almighty was his power. Anything Ichigo could do to change fate or overcome things like he normally did, instantly got rebuked because it was Yuha. Thank you for watching all the way through, folks. I really, really appreciate it. This is my 100 subscribers landmark video. This is a request from someone in my Discord. That's why I decided to do this debunk video. And like I said, I just didn't agree. Like I said, I'm subscribed to Hub. I do like his videos. I just didn't like this one, and this is my response to that. I hope you all have a good day. Thank you.